Talk Time is brought to you by Rinbar. Rinbare halodhia pora dur kore ek muhurtote.
Hello and welcome to Talk Time. My guest today is one of the world's most famous medical personalities, Dr. K.S. Chugh, popularly called the father of nephrology in India. Dr. Chugh, welcome to my show.
Thank you.
You passed MBBS in 1955,
Yes.
and you wanted to do or pursue MD medicine with a specialized subject in renal diseases.
Yes.
And your dean at the Punjab University, Dean of Medical Sciences, thought you were a madman.
Yes, that's a fact of life. You see, when I was a student in the final year, and when we used to go to the wards to see patients, majority of the patients used to die. We had no treatment for them. There was no diagnostic facility at that time. And therefore, and I also was reading in the journals at that time that dialysis had been started a few years earlier in the United States. And in 1954, the first kidney transplant was reported as a successful one. And therefore, I started thinking, why not do kidney as my special subject for MD? When I passed my MBBS, as you said, in 1955, I made my thesis plan that I wanted to write a thesis on evaluation of renal biopsy. Why? In 54, the first report of renal biopsy appeared, and that was a
But you had a real tough time convincing your dean.
No, this is what I'm going to tell you. Mm-hmm. My thesis plan was approved by the university, but at the same time, when I said I wanted to do kidney diseases, they said there's nothing like kidney diseases as a specialty.
Yeah.
And that they said there are only three ones which you can choose.
Cardiology,
gastroenterology, and neurology, of course, was not relevant. But since the kidneys are in the abdomen, they said, why not you take gastroenterology? Well, after 3 months, when the plan came back to me, I said, no, this is not acceptable to me. I gave some more, material on the recent developments in kidney and represented back. The plan went back to the university faculty again. They said, all right, if he doesn't want gastroenterology, kidney is concerned with hypertension. Why not take cardiology? So after another 3 months, it came back to me. I still said no, it was not acceptable.
And that is when that comment was made, whether this guy is mad?
No, that comment was made later, third time.
Okay.
Then the plan went back third time with all the photocopies of the recent literature and so on. When this time the plan went, there was our dean called Dr. Sachdeva. He said, this man seems to be a madman. Dafa karo isko. De do. And this is how, they accepted my plan.
So you are obstinate, you had your way, and you emerged as the first trained nephrologist in India.
Yes,
it has been a long journey, isn't it?
But the specialty given to me was, nephrology was not the name. They said urinary diseases, MD with medicine with urinary diseases.
But name aside, you emerged as the first trained nephrologist in India. I want to know from you, it's indeed been a very long journey.
It has been indeed a very long journey.
How has it been?
This was, I passed my MD in 1961. And then I moved to, my institute in Chandigarh called PGI in 1962 and or January 1963. It was at this time, in 1962, another thing happened in the country. And that was one of the former Maharajas of the state of Hathwa in Bihar had suffered from chronic kidney failure.
Okay.
And his physicians from Bihar approached Dr. Kolf at that time, who was doing dialysis,
William Kolf.
William Kolf.
Yeah.
In United States of America, that he should come to India and dialyze the Maharaja. Gopeshwar Singh Sahi was his name, and all the expenses will be met by the state. Kolf was a very busy man. He said, no, but I do want to help India. And he said, okay, you see, we have given one machine to CMC Vellore, which was lying as yet uncommissioned. So therefore, He said, I'll send my assistant. This assistant name was Nakamoto. He came, and one of the professors from CMC Vellore, he was a general physician by the name of Koshi, Professor Koshi. He trained Professor Koshi to do dialysis on this Maharaja.
I just want to know, in the meantime, is there a pattern in acute renal failure in India, and what are some of the common causes of renal failure, if at all, in this country?
Yes. Now, there has been a changing spectrum actually over the years, and I have observed it firsthand over the last 50 years. In fact, the pattern of acute renal failure in the 60s and the 50s, when I started doing biopsies also as a diagnostic procedure, was that most of the patients with acute kidney injury had developed acute kidney injury because of diarrheas and dehydration, because there was no therapy for treating patients, particularly in the rural setting or even in the big cities. If they lost fluid, if they lost salt, they used to develop kidney failure. The second important cause, which was very common at that time, was kidney failure occurring in obstetrical patients. Patients who had septic abortions, patients who had deliveries and developed sepsis, they used to develop kidney failure.
See, while reading up in the last few days, preparing for this interview with you, Dr. Chugh, I came across something called snake venom-induced renal failure. And what do you do with these people, particularly if they happen to be in interior areas?
Right. In fact, my original work on this
tropical issues, tropical diseases.
On snake venom-induced has been popular all over the world. If I tell you correctly, the International Society came to India to record my work on snake bite-induced kidney injury at Chandigarh in 1988, because I had published a lot. What was happening was snake bites were very common in our country, and there are type of snakes which are called vasculotoxic snakes like Russell viper or saw-scaled viper. These called coagulation disturbances in the body, and they cause bleeding tendencies in the body. And the result was that any patient who was bitten by snakes developed acute kidney injury.
Dr. Chugh, before I end this particular first session, what has been the biggest lesson learned in the more than 5 decades that you have been in the medical profession?
The biggest lesson I've learned is that you have to work consistently with dedication to reach your endpoint.
There is no shortcut.
There is no shortcut at all to big work.
Absolutely.
I had no facilities. Let me tell you, when I started my work on kidney disease, there were no facilities. For example, the needles, if I show you what the needles I used, were very crude. In fact,
have you kept them as mementos?
Well, I have them.
Okay.
Actually, I have published them.
I thought as much.
I have published them. I have kept them as mementos with me still.
Yeah.
Now, these were very crude needles. But we were also scared of
Absolutely,
complications.
Dr. We'll continue our conversation. On that note, we shall go for a short break now, but stay on. When I come back, I shall talk to Dr. Chugh about the economical and ethical issues in dialysis and lots more. Welcome back. I'm in conversation with world-renowned nephrologist Dr. K.S. Chugh. Dr. Chugh, an estimated 1 lakh people in India every year suffer from what is called end-stage renal failure. Now, neither the government nor the insurance companies come to cover these people because dialysis is extremely expensive. How do you look at the situation? How do you tackle this issue?
Well, the situation has not been very good in our country so far. Not only about 100,000, there are about 200,000 patients.
Oh, okay, every year?
Every year.
I see.
Who develop end-stage renal failure and require the assistance of either dialysis or renal transplantation. The fact is, so far, it is only the government servants or public servants who are entitled for free treatment in the government, with the government, have been getting some kind of facility, or some of the business firms which can support the treatment of their employees have been supporting. Otherwise, most of the people have been spending for their dialysis or transplantation from their own pocket. And you can imagine.
So have you been pushing this case where either the government or the corporate sector come up with some kind of a mechanism to deal with?
Numerous times. But the fact
At what
is,
level?
No,
who are you lobbying with?
At the government level also, on a number of times. But I tell you what are the reasons. The reasons is, so far, the government provides only facility for free consultation, or in the government institutions, if somebody comes for the dialysis, we ask them to bring the material, and that cuts down the expense. What has the government done so far? Even the last month, there was a news from the Ministry of Health that the government is not thinking of any providing free dialysis in the country as a whole. But 3 governments, I must give them credit, have taken an initiative. The first one was Andhra Pradesh. They, under the Rajiv Arogya Siri program, that's a government-sponsored
They've covered
insurance.
dialysis as part
They
of the
have
free.
covered dialysis free to the whole state.
So basically what you want is that across the board in the entire country, the government should take up this issue.
They
and
should
provide free dialysis.
After all, it is happening in the well-developed countries.
Absolutely. Well, now, Dr. Chugh, I would also like to know from you, what are some of the ethical issues, involving dialysis in developing countries?
The ethical issues in dialysis are, I'll tell you both. The ethical issues in dialysis are that the people do start dialysis when they come in the end stage. Majority of the patients, our own statistics have shown 50% of the patients present only at the time when they are in end stage renal failure. And they start the dialysis, but with the developing resources, they cut down the dialysis, either frequency or they have to stop.
So the whole purpose is lost.
Whole purpose is
is
gone.
lost.
Would you believe that majority of the deaths occur in the first 3 months in our country?
Yeah.
It is only those people who can afford to pay. This is one of the biggest ethical questions, that we are allowing our people to go away, without providing.
And where the issue of wealth comes to call the shots.
Yeah.
The money calls the shots.
And we know that these people can survive for a long time. That has been demonstrated.
Now, you see, a lot of patients from Europe, the Middle East, Canada, and elsewhere come to India for treatment in renal diseases, including kidney transplant. My question to you, Dr. Chugh, what are the pull factors? What brings them to India?
Well, it's a very interesting story and a very interesting question which you have asked, and I have been involved right from the beginning. Let me say, we started transplant in this country. The first was done in CMC Vellore in 1971.
Yeah.
Then we performed it in Chandigarh in 1973. The question at that time was that we have only 2 drugs. At that time, the survival rate was only 50 to 60%. In the 80s, a new drug came called cyclosporine. The results of transplant improved, both with the living as well as with the deceased organs.
Yeah.
The result was, once this happened, and the first lead was taken by Bombay, that in Jaslok Hospital and other hospitals, people started coming from overseas.
So that was the trigger. That was the trigger.
That was the figure. At that time, particularly from Saudi Arabia and the Middle East countries, the people used to come, and we were providing them the donors.
Okay.
They were not willing to spend,
No, when you talked about donors, Dr. Chugh, it's a layman's question to you. You see, we often hear about organized rackets in organ trade. And my question to you, if we put it in the context of kidney transplant, where do we stand?
The fact remains that organ trade have really put us to shame in the whole world, because ours was the country which started the first organ trade. The people used to come, we used to provide them demo, and then the doors were opened for the whole world to go to either Pakistan or Brazil or in many other, or Philippines.
Absolutely.
And they used to get donors being provided. And the worst in this was China. China, do you know what was happening in China? In China, the donors were the executed prisoners' bodies after death.
That's pretty sad.
Most 99% of the transplants were being done with organs removed from the executed prisoners. And the people used to run to China for getting kidney donors.
Sad story there. On that note, we shall go for another short break, but stay on, we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm still in conversation with Dr. K.S. Chugh. Dr. Chugh, one of your students, Dr. Tanmoy Das, who heads the international hospital here, remembers you as a man who is a very hard taskmaster and a total stickler for time.
Yes, not only Tanmay, most of the students will remember me for that I was a hard taskmaster.
You were a terror, apparently.
Maybe I was, but if you meet my students anywhere in the world, I shouldn't say it myself, ultimately they have all, felt that this discipline was absolutely
Necessary.
important and necessary for their growth. If I tell you where my students are like Tanmay, there are many others who have also read
All over the world.
all over the world, the highest positions they have occupied in the world in nephrology. The fact remains I was a disciplinarian only at work. If Tanmay Das and my other fellows will recall, they'll come to my home, I'll invite them, I'll be with them, I'll play with them, I enjoyed with them, and this was demonstrated to me, I think, by their affection which they showed.
Absolutely,
when
absolutely.
They organized a fest script for me. You know what is fest script? Fest script is when your students organize a respectable function for you after your retirement. And they did it in 1994. Believe me, their expressions, their feelings,
Absolutely.
they projected openly there, and I said, in fact, I was very happy to listen for them. I was a hard taskmaster, but only outside at work.
Absolutely. Now, you have written nearly 500 research papers. You have received innumerable national and international awards, including the Padma Shri. Dr. Chugh, how do you feel? What does awards mean to you?
Awards mean that there has been recognition of the work which we have done. But much more important, I feel, is when I see my fellows doing extremely well professionally and academically.
Now, Dr. Chugh, I must deviate a little bit and ask you to listen from you a story, both funny and emotional, where obituaries started pouring in when you were mistaken mistaken with Dr. Chugh, who was the physician of Dr. Lal Bahadur Shastri, the then Prime Minister.
Yeah, they have been...
And you have written some very, very poignant obituaries about you by your own colleagues, and you must be still having some of them with you.
That's a fact. You see, it happened 2 times.
2 times?
2 times. I have read my obituary 2 times. The first was when Lal Bahadur Shastri's physician, whose name was also Dr. Chugh, he died. And the news was flashed all over the world. And wherever my friends and students were, they thought, sometimes you don't remember the first name, many friends, and they said Dr. Chugh has died. So they started writing letters, trying to contact my wife, on phone to express their condolence and how, good friend I was to them. But the best was the second time. The American Journal of Kidney Diseases publishes editorials on people who have made some outstanding contribution.
Okay.
I was 7th one in that series in the American Journal of Kidney Disease editorial series. So when this editorial appeared about my contribution to the nephrology in the world, there was, the Index Medicus or Current Contents publishes all the contents every week. It so happened when this particular issue was indexed, and one of my former mentors in England, in Hammersmith Hospital, Dr. Oliver Wrong, he was sitting in the library and he was going through the current contents. My name appeared in the obituary column.
Okay.
When he read, he said, Kirpal has died. I must write to his wife, Harjeet, and inquire what has happened. But as a research worker, he was a thorough research worker. He said, before I write, I must go to the library and read what is the obituary, what is the contents. So when he reached the library and opened out the American Journal of Kidney Disease, the obituary was on the next page about one Dr. Frank MacDonald who had died. And the same editor had written my editorial and the obituary.
Okay, so there was a mix-up there.
Now when he read about it, he wrote a letter, which letter I still possess. He wrote, Dear Kirpal, I have seldom written to a dead man as I am doing it today. I was going through the American Journal of Kidney Disease contents in the Index Medicus and the current contents, and your name figured, so I went to the library and read. I must say, you can join Mark Twain in saying that the news of your death has been exaggerated.
Absolutely. On that note, Dr. Chugh, wish you many, many more years of successful life and contribute to the world of nephrology and medical science in general.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Talk Time was brought to you by rinbar. rinbare হালধীয়া পৰা দূৰ কৰে এক মুহূৰ্ততে।